question is, does the Tiger 1200 make a good tourer for two-up riding? It definitely makes for a good tourer solo, but does it make for a good two-up touring bike? There are some issues with the stock aluminium luggage, and I'll spend a bit of time going through those here. But apart from that, it makes a fantastic tourer. Look at the rear passenger. Has their own power supply, rated at 5 amps, so if it is cooler weather, that's great for them for heated gear. They control their own heated seat on the top of the range models, the XRT and the XCA. This doesn't come with all the models, but I think it's only about £25, dirt cheap to fit. Easy to fit yourself as well. So there's a lot of good seat comfort for the Pillion, good power for the Pillion. There's a USB connector underneath there as well. So what you can do is run a USB cable out of there permanently for the Pillion. So if the Pillion wants to put a USB connection directly on the phone, they can, or charge a Cardo or something, a Senna on the go, if it's a type that supports that. So that's not too bad. In terms of tying stuff down, it's absolutely covered in tie down points all around the back and the sides. Great big grab handles for the Pillion, great to stick on. Quite nice wide foot pegs, excellent. If you have the quick shifter fitted, the smoothness of the bike going up and down gear is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic for a Pillion. They're not nodding back and forward all the time. It's a very, very smooth quick shifter, even at low speeds and on the downshift. The suspension. You need more damping when you're more loaded. And the damping settings that are in the rider modes might not be suitable for you. They might be, but they might not be suitable for you when you've got a load of luggage, panniers, and a Pillion. So what you might want to do is disassociate the rider modes and the damping. So when you're on smaller back roads, whatever rider mode you're in, you can increase the damping. And if you change that rider mode, let's say back to rain, it doesn't make a change to that. And then when you're out on the big open road, on the motorway, freeway, whatever it is, you can soften up that damping again because it's a smoother road and you don't need so much damping, and give yourself and your Pillion a bit of comfort. So the electronic suspension, the damping adjustment, is brilliant on it because it's so easy to do while you're on the road without going through a whole pile of menus. Because it's so easy to do, as I say, when you're in a back road with your Pillion and all your luggage, up the damping. When you're on a smoother road, reduce the damping. And it's brilliant in that way. It's absolutely brilliant in that way. So you've got comfort through the suspension, seat, heated seats if you're winter riding. Plenty of power for the Pillion and the passenger. Its one letdown is the no sat-nav, high mounting point for the sat-nav. But I'll mention that in other videos. I've made my own and other people have made different variants of it. This actually does make a difference to a Pillion. I've tested it. They found when I've had this on and the screen is in a higher position, it just pushes a bit of air above their head as well. So it does make a difference. Makes a huge difference to the rider at speed. So I definitely have that for touring. Take it off otherwise. It's shaft drive, obviously. That makes for a good tourer. No chain maintenance. I have to say, I don't find chain maintenance difficult, but look, some people don't want to do it. So it is handy in that way. So plenty of tie down points, plenty of power, shaft drive, superb comfort for touring. Plenty of luggage carrying capacity, You do have to have a think about the Triumph aluminium luggage. The top box and the sliding carriage isn't good for a pillion. The panniers in the Triumph position aren't great for a pillion. Now if you have longer legs, not as bad, and you put your feet out a bit so they don't interfere with the driver's legs. But if you want to give the passenger more movement on their feet, the Givi pannier rails will be better for it as well. So does the Triumph Tiger 1200 make a brilliant tourer? It makes an absolutely fantastic tourer. Absolutely fantastic. But just have a little bit of a thought to the pillion if you're going to up. It has a massive load carrying capacity, the Tiger 1200, massive. It's up there with 1600 GTLs, all the big BMW tours, 225 kilos, something like that. There's a few kilos variation depending on which model you buy. The brakes are well capable of dealing with your luggage and two up. Those front Brembos are brilliant. The engine easily copes with all the luggage and a full load. I find it's not really affected that much. It doesn't feel like it. In a previous video, Full Metal Jacket, I talked a lot about the Triumph luggage and how good it is. And it's lovely luggage and it's good quality. It's Givi. But it does have certain characteristics. It's great when you're solo on the bike and you'll see the side panniers. They kind of sit over that rear wheel axle. And that rear pannier is reasonably well forward. So it's trying to keep the weight kind of forward from that rear axle as much as it can. But that doesn't bode well for a pillion, in that this pillion foot peg is far too close for that pannier. That pannier pushes your boot in, and I'll show you how that looks. So look, here's my driver boot at a reasonable place. Got a toe near the gear selector there, so that's where you might expect to have your rider boot. Here's my pillion boot. Can just get the heel on the peg, but it's sitting on top of the rider's leg. That's just not going to fly at all. That pillion is going to have to sit there with their boot at an angle, sticking out, a bit like a flappy duck, which, if you're going to be all day cruising on this thing, that's not great to ask your pillion to do that. So I'm going to try the Givi pannier rails, which will sit these rear panniers much further back and lower. Now I know I'm changing the layout of the bike. I know I'm taking that weight rear of that rear axle. But if you want to take a pannier, if you want to take a pillion, that's the trade-off. It's got to be done. Now I do think the Triumph layout is great. If you're solo camping, this is a brilliant platform across for roll bags and tents and stuff like that. Brilliant platform. But not great for your pillion. So what I'll do is, I'll have both sets of rails. I have the Givi rails and the Triumph rails. And when I'm solo, which will be most of the time, I use the Triumph rails and I use the luggage like this. But if I'm going anywhere for any distance with a pillion, I'll put the Givi rails back on. Not quite so important, but the top box sits fairly forward as well. And okay, you've got this pad, so the pillion rider's back is not going into the buckle. But you know, once they have a bit of body armour on and their jacket and the likes, they get pushed forward a little bit more again. They do start losing a fair bit of this seat. So they're kind of bums in the middle and not back. So I might be tempted to ditch the top box if I'm going tour for a journey. That kind of gets rid of a nice backrest for the pillion though. So I'm gonna have to think about doing something else. I might use my soft SW Motec tail bag and see if I can strap it nicely to that back plate. It's nice for the pillion to have something to lean on. I don't mean lean on it like an armchair, but I mean lean on to give them a bit of a secure feeling. So we'll have a think about that. So I'll come back when I've changed these rail kits over. They're on order. It should be a few days. Yeah, with your body armour and your jacket, I've probably got my head chopped off, haven't I? Yeah. Your body armour and your jacket, with those pads there, you're pushed fairly forward on this rear seat. I'm sitting right on that front edge of the rear seat. You can't kind of get your bum in like that. You wouldn't be riding pillion like that all day. You're too length forward. So to stay upright, you're kind of on the front edge of that seat. I'm hanging over the rear of that pillion seat. So this is too far forward. I actually think this could do with going at least 2 inches back. So I'm probably going to take that off altogether for my next pillion tour or session. Because really you want to be further back on this seat. You're just pushing into the rider. You can see my feet there, I have them splayed to the side. It's not terrible. It's not terrible having them splayed to the side a bit. But it does mean that that pillion is stuck with them like that, rather than be able to move their feet around. It is nice for the pillion to have the boxes kind of close to the hand so they can hold on like that in the Triumph configuration. So if your pillion doesn't mind splaying their feet sideways and they're maybe petite and they're not sitting quite so forward on this rear seat, the Triumph bags may be okay for you. You can try them. You know, especially if you get them for free, you know, which they're usually on offer, and you do. So, and I have longer legs. If you've got a pillion with short legs, these are definitely going to be digging into the back of their calves. They're not going to like that at all. So if you have longer legs, you don't mind splaying your feet out slightly as a pillion, these bags don't really get in your way. They're okay. But if you have big feet, or actually even reasonably sized feet, you are going to have to splay your feet a bit. So I'm not saying the Triumph layout is terrible, and I did say I didn't think this was as big as an issue as this. I actually think this top box is more of an issue. If this top box was back 2 inches, I'd leave these panniers as it is for, say, someone my size with a longer leg. But anyway, I'm going to get both rails, the Givi rails, and interchange them. So if I have a pillion, it is going to give them more room all round, and definitely take this off. I might modify the back plate and try and move it back 2 inches, but for the amount of times I take a pillion, I might just use a soft bag behind instead. So that's that. That's the pillion arrangement on the Tiger. It's not horrendous, but some won't like it. Short legs, pillion, you won't like it. But if you're short-legged and petite, you might find that that top box isn't too bad. But if you're bigger, taller, you'll find the Triumph position for the panniers might not be too bad for you, but you won't like that top box. It's pushing you too far forward. So that's my solution. Well, it's not my solution, it's a solution that lots of people have used. Now the Givi Panniers, there we go, done. I can tell from these immediately what the difference is going to be. It's very easy to spot. this leg is so much longer sticking out the original Triumph one. So this left pannier rail is going to sit in tighter. So this is where I could have had a larger left pannier if I wanted to. But I'll stick with the Triumph boxes obviously, so I'll still have 237 litres, but it's going to be tighter in on the left hand side. So I'm going to go from a symmetrical look to an asymmetrical look. So I was kind of here. Geez, the Triumph ones feel miles heavier. Miles heavier. That's strange. Now the Triumph way of connecting, it's a little bit swisher, I have to say. It is quite a nice clean connection. Looks like the Givi ones are going to use, yeah, these bottom bolts here, by the looks of it. So not as nice. It's not utilised. The Givi ones aren't utilising these nice proper rail holders here. That's a shame, but yeah, you'll forget about it in 5 minutes. So what I've got to do next is swap these over. The Triumph one for the Givi one. So I put the Triumph one on the Givi racks. And this is all down to other people's experience. This is not me working this out. This is other people. I've referenced their video before about switching over the Givi luggage racks. So I take no credit for knowing anything about this, only what I've learned from what other people have learned. Right, I'm told I've got to be extremely careful taking these apart because there's tiny little springs in here. So they open up easy enough. I don't know which side the springs are on, so I'm just going to kind of hold this stuff together. Yep, let's drop that there. So where is the spring? Might be a spring on the top half then. Oh no, bottom half. Oh great, they're going to be a freaking arse to get back in. Right, they're under there. So they're in that bottom half. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be 6 pairs of hands to get those back in. You can just see the springs underneath there. So I'll try not to disturb those, but that could be a tall order. So here we are. Swap that over. Yeah, let's get the Triumph one off. Same thing. Yeah, the Triumph one's off. They're a bit dusty and crappy inside actually, so I might grease those up before I put those back on, because sometimes it does take a good little push to click those in. They're probably just a bit of crud in there. But a little bit of grease wouldn't go amiss in there actually. You've got to get those in without little springs falling out. Once you suss it out, it's very easy to do. So, but you need to hold the thing together until it's down tight. Yeah, just make sure the operation there. So, new Givi rails, old Triumph top, whatever you call it, mounting thingy bell, Hujma flip, microwave, coffee machine. Just the second set to do now. Swap those two over. What you can do, these springs they fill out on that one. So what you can do when you're reassembling it, you can put some grease in the spring holes, and they sit quite deeply in, so they'll sit there without falling out. Easier to reassemble then. Just give that a bit of a clean, because they do get a bit sticky actually. They get full of crud because they're kind of a bit of exposed.